Hello, I'm Dr. Kimberly Douglas, and I am the chief contributor to the Substack, The Learning Landscape, where we are mapping the 21st century. We are mapping 21st century learning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a subscriber. I encourage you to comment in response to things that you hear, like, also share through restacking and through notes in Substack. Thank you for being here. Today, I'm going to talk about testing your ideas. And when we talk about the learning landscape, it consists of many um, different tools and techniques. And we've talked about gig platforms, things you can learn on gig platforms. We've talked about things you can learn in podcasts, inside of games. We've talked about YouTube videos and just a myriad of places where you can learn things that are not part of the traditional educational landscape, but this landscape also includes traditional education as well. Today, I'm going to keep on with the conversation in the non-traditional space and talk about a different route that some creators are taking. Instead of creating courses, they are creating apps and tools, especially with the proliferation, with the just mass production of these AI tools and no coding and things like that has made it possible for people to develop apps. So we're going to talk about startup founders who are building tech tools and other tools, tech and non-technical tools, and they are providing a way of educating. So even if you go on a health app to, show you how to go get a screening, there's a level of education that is happening. So when we talk about literacy, we talk about critical thinking, and you evaluate people's capability to think critically or to intuit things or you think about whether or not they have a certain level of literacy. It's really important to look at how people are interacting with and interfacing with applications and other tools, other online tools, so that we can see the whole picture here. And not just looking at things that people are saying on social media or how they might be missing the mark on social media. Sometimes I think we lose sight of how much technical training all of us, if we're on Facebook, if we're on TikTok, if we're on LinkedIn, if we're on X, if we are on Substack, I don't think we really recognize and fully appreciate how much technical training we've had over the past 5 years. And so if you're evaluating literacy or you're evaluating critical skills, make sure I would encourage you to take that into consideration. But today, I want to talk about how instead of building courses or ebooks or workshops, which still may also be part of this, you have people who are striking out as founders, who are building apps, who are building tools. They're also building communities around these apps and tools. I want to give you an example of, and this is a person who subscribed and who's been a long-time supporter. If you go to the Substack for Not Forgotten, which is in support of a tool that is being built called Ethereth, and inside that tool, the founder and that community are educating about archiving and about collective memory. So instead of hosting a course, which Ethereth may also host courses and ebooks and all that, or there may be ebooks and courses connected to Ethereth, in addition to that or in lieu of that, there's a tool that helps people navigate through the conversation. So you have lots of people, and you can really see this on TikTok, but you can see it in other places, a lot of founders who are doing what is called building in public. So they are taking people through their journey of developing an app or other tools. And some of the things they talk about include their pitch decks and the metrics that have to show up. So pitch decks, because a lot of these founders are seeking to be funded by venture capitalists or through crowdfunding or other sources of funding, they have to develop pitch decks or they have to develop their 30-second pitch. And in that pitch, what they're doing is they're talking about the problem that they're solving with their tool. They're talking about the people they're solving the problem for, what the solution is, and how they provide the solution. So to be convincing to any prospective funders, they're talking about their metrics. They're talking about their social proof that 10 out of 20 people do blah, 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 or 11 out of 15 people are insured by X healthcare system and are showing that they have problems when they log into certain forms, or 20 out of 25 people would prefer to have a digital form versus a paper form, or vice versa. So they're coming with the social proof that the thing that they are creating is very necessary. And again, I want to go back to what our focus is. It's about the learning landscape, what they are doing in their process. They're not only educating, they're not only putting forth a solution, but in putting forth a solution, there's an education process that has to happen. They're educating funders, but also inside the app and where people might use the app, or the experience people might have with the app, there's an educational process that happens there as well. Because one of the things that they have to do is make people aware that a certain problem is occurring, that something in healthcare is being underfunded, or these services could be more integrated. Instead of you having to go see multiple doctors, you should be able to have a one-stop shop situation. So maybe they're providing a one-stop shop. And as part of providing it, they're showing you the inefficiencies of having you go to all these different places. So there's an educational process there, and it helps the user understand the environment a little bit better. But also included in the pitch decks are things like revenue projections, because what they have to do is they have to show that there's a return on the investment for the funder, and what they call year over year goals. But here's the thing, one of the things I want to drill down in. At the heart of all of this, and whatever their presentation is, whatever their pitch is, whatever their purpose is, are data. So data plays a key role in, talking about metrics, or how many people need this, or how many people would be served by this app. The social proof, all of that involves metrics. All of that involves data. And so when we think about collecting data, and you need it, if you're putting together a course, this conversation applies to a course, to an ebook, to a workshop. It is good to have that social proof. And so there's a number of ways that you can gather this social proof or gather data. You can do it through polls, you can do it through surveys, focus groups, data mining, data scraping, and other methods, document mining. So the data scraping, data mining, you can do through social listening on social media, but you can also do a document search. You can do data mining through emails if that is permitted in this particular environment. And each one of those help demonstrate the need for this app or demonstrate the need for this tool in a certain way. One of the methods that I use, and this is something that if you want to talk to me more about this, I certainly invite you to have a deeper conversation with me about this, is a one-to-one interview with the person that you think you're building for. So when you set out to create a tool, an app, or any other kind of tool, you have to understand what demographic you're serving: gender, race, age, economic level, zip code, other geographical factors. Those are demographics, and they tell you something, but they don't tell you everything. You also have to understand psychographics, their beliefs, their needs, their attitudes, what makes them want to get up in the morning. How do they speak to their neighbor? What is their connection to the people in their community? So the psychographics. And one of the ways that you can get at those two sets of information more efficiently is through one-to-one interviews with people. Start by asking them a semi-structured interview, asking them an open-ended question. And so I'm trying to think of one that I actually talked about on a live yesterday. So there was a person there who was talking about, that's not a good example. Give me just a second here. So instead of asking, do you think that you could get good health care? So that's a closed-ended question. It's a potential conversation stopper. So the answer is yes or no. And then you'd have to ask a follow-up question. Versus, what can you tell me about your experience with healthcare? So that's an open-ended question. And then with the one-to-one interview, some follow-up questions to help get tighter and tighter in the focus. And so that's one of the things that I do. But I'm bringing these up to talk about how in the development process, whether you're developing a course or you're developing an ebook or you're developing an app, it's about testing the whole way. You're testing at each point in the process. When you first start out with an idea, you are validating, you're testing your idea by getting it out into the world. So one of the ways you validate your idea is by writing it down. So you're validating it yourself. You can also validate your idea by talking to your family and friends about it and just kind of getting their feedback. You can validate that way. You can validate by data mining and seeing what people on social media are saying. And you can validate by putting it in an AI generator. So what those forms of validation is, they give you certain kinds of feedback. The more accurate and precise data that you need to build your tool, to build this educational tool, the more your validation and your testing changes. So in the beginning, accuracy is not so important and precision is not so important. Accuracy is important, but it doesn't have to necessarily be precise. So in the beginning, you want to know that you're onto something. And so an AI generator can do this, and it can tell you with a certain amount of accuracy, depending upon which one you use and how they're developed, what generation of the tool you're in. It can tell you whether you're onto something. Your friends and family can tell you whether you're onto something. Your own logic, your own thought process can tell you whether you're onto something or not. So, but the more accurate information, the more accurate data you need, then you have to move into other areas. So then you start to look at polls and surveys, and focus groups and one-to-one interviews. So those tools can offer you accuracy. They can also start to offer you precision. So you are not just, so what happens with a lot of these tools, people skip from I have an idea to let me test, let me prototype, build it out, and let me test it. And so there's lots of things in between. So one of the steps that's in between is testing that you know what problem you're actually solving. And the way that you test that is by talking to the people you think you're building for. You have to talk to the people you think you're building for. You're either going to have to talk to them before you build, or you're going to have to talk to them after you build. And the way you talk to them is going to be different in the before and the after. And so the before part is about validating and testing that you are solving the problem that you think you're solving for the people you think you're solving it for. And so that is testing the problem. Once you build a product or service, then you are testing the product or the service, and that is called user experience testing or usability testing. And you keep testing for continuous improvement. As long as you have this product or this service out in the market, you keep testing to make sure that it is lining up with the needs of the people you think you're building for. So this always goes back to, who is this for and what problem am I solving for them? And then also, do they perceive it as a problem that they want solved? And do they want it solved with a solution that I am offering? This is about continuous development. So continuous development starts with an idea or ideation, and you validating your own idea. You validate it by putting it out into the world. That's one form of testing. That's one form of validation, but it does not get you to the level of accuracy and precision that you need before you expend resources to build something out. And here's the thing, even if you skip the step, the best time to test is now. It's never too late. So if you have already started something, you already have users, you can always go back and do some very targeted testing, or you can use the feedback that you're getting from people in like a beta test, or just use in general use. What kind of feedback are you getting? Plan out generations for the tool development so you can make the continuous improvement. And so even if you don't grab it on the front end, even if you don't validate the problem on the front end, you don't test the problem on the front end, there are ways that you can build this in. And I'm happy to talk to you about this. It's very important for you, even if you do not see yourself as an educator, it's very important for you to see your role in the learning landscape. If you are building, if you're a founder, if you work for a founder, if you're building out no-code tools, if you're building out apps, no apps and other no-code tools, if you're building out websites, anything that is going to engage users, you are engaged in some process of education and even curriculum development. You may not call it that, you may not see it that way, but there is a learning outcome that you are expecting. If you're expecting them to be able to use a system at a certain, just a moment. If you are expecting them to be able to use a system, to operate a system at a certain level, there's a certain amount of education involved, even if it's how to move from screen to screen. And you're going to embed education because here's the thing. If education was not necessary, then you wouldn't need the tool. There obviously was some sort of gap. And in order to bring people into the conversation to fill the gap in the way that you imagine it could be filled, then there's a certain amount of skills development that they have to do in order to participate with you in filling that gap. Please don't underestimate your role in building out this learning landscape. If you are a founder, if you're developing a technical, non-technical, a technical tool, a non-technical community, you are part of this landscape. The process that you're going through, the data that you're collecting, your data collection processes, they are all part of a type of curriculum building. No, it's not the same as in a traditional institution. It's not going to be explained the same way. It's not going to come off the same way. But it is important for you to see that you are participating in a type of literacy that is going to have implications far into the future. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you are a founder, I encourage you to schedule time with me, and I will put my calendar link up with this post. I want you to schedule time with me to talk about what kind of data you are collecting and how you are setting yourself up to have powerful pitches, how you're setting yourself up to be able to identify who your demographic is, who your psychographic is, what their psychographics are, and so that they know that you're talking to them. Because all of this, everything I've described to you is part of the market research process. And market research starts from the moment you start creating, and probably even before then as you are ideating and putting your ideas together. This is part of market research. And so, which is the lead up to sales. So you don't go from, I came up with an idea to I'm now trying to sell something. If you're a founder, I want to talk to you so that we can talk about what those steps are throughout the process. How do you test throughout the process? Because you are educating, if nothing else, you're educating people on the skills that they need to be able to use your tool, but you're also educating on so much more. The existence of your app or other tool is evidence that education needed to take place. Let me know if you have any questions. And thank you for being a supporter of the learning landscape. It has been my pleasure to have this conversation with you. And I encourage you to keep this conversation going. Goodbye.